Welcome. Poppy says I could chat about the book after the read. We could. You want to chat about anything about yesterday's book, or what else did we read this week? We read that tough George Sanders, 10th of December. That one was called Puppy. That one was tough. But let me back up and say hi and welcome to people. Welcome to Frankenstein Tea. This is a daily program from the Island Free Library, and getting a little situated. I just finished recording for a weekly podcast that I do with Allison Warfel from the Black Island Medical Center. She and I started a podcast, and we just finished our record, and it was a great conversation this week. So I'm switching gears here. And during that podcast record, I lost, I ran out of juice. So I had to go get my charger. I had to go find a book. I had to get something to drink. But I think I had to find my glasses. But I think I'm there. Frankenstein Tea is a daily program. It is a chance for you to take a time out from whatever you've been doing today. Time for you to sort of reset your day. Plenty of the day left, plenty of the afternoon left, plenty of the evening left, and a chance for me to read to you during that reset time. I read adult stories. They're for adult listeners. They're a variety of genres and writing styles and authors and ages and publication dates and time periods. I read a wide range of stories. Some people like, some don't like, some I like, some I really like. But this is my program, and so it's always a short story, and I love that. And I've been thinking about that, like how long will I be able to do short stories? Probably for whatever, there's plenty of short stories. But I didn't know if we wanted to rethink that a little and read something together over summer, a little bit at a time or something. So that's some of what I've been thinking about today. I hope everyone out there is having a good day. Again, this is a time for you to check in with yourself, sit back. Have you eaten right today? Did you sleep well last night? Do you need a nap? Do you have a good plan for dinner? Have you been thinking good thoughts? Have you gotten outside? Have you moved your body? Those kinds of things, really take a nice check-in. You can think about those things while I read or not. You can just listen to the story. So I often talk about how I read a variety. I choose a book, or I choose a bunch of books, and then I read through them. And I read this story. I read something from this story already. This is Something Rich and Strange, Selected Stories by Ron Rash. And I read something from this book, and there has been something that's haunted me. There it is. Good. And I wanted to get back to it, and I wasn't sure when I would, but today is the day. So let's see. Yeah, this is the one I wanted to read. This story I read weeks and weeks ago to myself, not out loud yet. And it's been with me this whole time. So that's a little introduction. This is Ron Rash, Something Rich and Strange, Selected Stories. This is published by HarperCollins, Echo. And it was published in 2014. Okay. And this short story is called The Woman at the Pond. Water has its own archaeology, not a layering, but a leveling, and thus is truer to our sense of the past. Because what is memory but near and far events spread and smoothed beneath the present's surface? A green birthday candle that didn't expire with a wish lies next to a green Coleman lantern lit 12 years later. Chalky sun motes in a sixth grade classroom harbor close to a university library's high window. A song on a staticky radio shoals against the same song at a hastily arranged wedding reception. This is what I think of when James Murray's daughter decides to drain the pond. A fear of lawsuits, she claims, something her late father considered himself exonerated from by posting a sign, "Fish and swim at your own risk." She hired Wallace Ruddisell for the job, a task that requires opening the release valve on the standpipe, keeping it clear until what was once a creek will be a creek once more. I grew up with Wallace, and unlike so many of our classmates, he and I still live in Lattimore. Wallace inherited our town's hardware store, one of the few remaining businesses. "Bet you're wanting to get some of those lures back you lost in high school," Wallace says when I ask when he'll drain the pond. "There must be a lot of them. For a while, you were out there most every evening." Which is true. I was 17, and in a town of 300, my days spent bagging groceries. Back then, there was no internet, no cable TV or VCR, at least not in our house. Some evenings that summer, I'd listen to the radio or watch television with my parents, or look over college brochures and financial aid forms the guidance counselor had given me. But I'd usually go down to the pond. Come fall my senior year, though, Angie and I began dating. We found other things to do in the dark. A few times, Wallace or another friend joined me, but I usually fished alone. After a day at the grocery store, I didn't mind being away from people a while, and the pond at twilight was a good place. The swimmers and other fishermen were gone, leaving behind beer and cola bottles, tangles of fishing line, gray cinder blocks used for seats. Later in the night, couples came to the pond, their leavings on the bank as well, rubbers and blankets. Once a pair of panties hung on the white oak's limb. But that hour, when day and night made their slow exchange, I had the pond to myself. Over the year, James Murray's John boat had become communal property. Having wearied of swimming out to retrieve the boat, I'd bought 20 feet of blue nylon rope to keep it moored. I'd unknot the rope from the white oak, set my fishing gear and Coleman lantern in the bow, and paddle out to the pond's center. I'd fish until it was neither day nor night, but balanced between. There never seemed to be a breeze, pond and shore equally smoothed, just stillness, as though the world had taken a soft breath and was holding it in. And even time had leveled out, moving neither forward nor back. Then the frogs and crickets, waiting for full dark, announced themselves, or a breeze came up, and I again heard the slosh of water against land. Or, one night near the end of that summer, a truck rumbling toward the pond. On Saturday, I leave at 2:00 when the other shift manager comes in. I no longer live near the pond, but my mother does. So I pull out of the grocery store's parking lot and turn right, passing under Lattimore's one stoplight. On the left are 4 boarded up stores. Behind them, like an anchored cloud, the mill's water tower, blue paint chipping off the tank. I drive by Glenn's Cafe, where Angie works. Soon after that, the small clapboard house where she and our daughter Rose live. Angie's Ford Escort isn't there, but the truck belonging to Rose's boyfriend is. I don't turn in. It's not my weekend to be in charge, and at least I know Rose is on the pill. because I took her to the clinic myself. Soon there are only farmhouses, most in disrepair, slumping barns and woodsheds, rusty tractors snared by kudzu and trumpet vines. I make a final right turn and park in front of my mother's house. She comes onto the porch, and I know from her disappointed expression that she's gotten the week confused and expects to see Rose. We talk a minute, and she goes back inside. I walk down the sloping land, straddle the sagging barbed wire, and make my way through brambles and broom sedge, what was once a pasture. The night the truck came to the pond, an afternoon thunderstorm had rinsed the humidity from the air. The evening felt more like late September than mid-August. After rowing out, I had cast toward the willows on the far bank where I'd caught bass in the past. The lure I used was a rapella, my favorite because I could fish on it on the surface or submerged. After a dozen tries, nothing struck, so I paddled closer to the willows and cast into the cove where the creek ended. A small bass hit, and I reeled it in, its red gills flaring as I freed the treble hook and lowered the fish back into the water. A few minutes later, the truck bumped down the dirt road to the water's edge. The headlights slashed across the pond before the vehicle jerked right and halted beside the white oak as the headlights dimmed. Music came from the truck's open windows and carried over the water with such clarity I recognized the song. The cab light came on and the music stopped. Minutes passed and stars began filling the sky. As a thick-shouldered moon rimmed up over a ridge, a man and a woman got out of the truck. The John boat drifted toward the willows, and I let it, afraid any movement would give away my presence. The man and woman's voices rose, became angry, then a sound sharp as a rifle shot. The woman fell, and the man got back in the cab. The headlights flared, and the truck turned around, slinging mud before the tires gained traction. The truck swerved up the dirt road and out of sight. The woman slowly lifted herself from the ground. She moved closer to the bank and sat on a cinder block. As more stars pierced the sky and the moon lifted itself above the willow trees, I waited for the truck to return or the woman to leave, though I had no idea where she might go. The John boat drifted deeper into the willows, the drooping branches raking at my face. I didn't want to move, but the willows had entangled the boat. The graying wood creaked as it bumped against the bank. I lifted the paddle and pushed away as quietly as possible. As I did, the boat rocked and the metal tackle box banged against its side. "Who's out there?" the woman asked. "I can see you. I can." I lit the lantern and paddled to the pond's center. "I'm fishing," I said, and lifted the rod and reel to prove it. The woman didn't respond. "Are you okay?" "My face will be bruised," she said after a few moments, "but no teeth knocked out. Bruises fade. I'll be better off tomorrow than he will." I set the paddle on my knees. In the quiet, it seemed the pond too was listening. "You mean the man that hit you?" "Yeah, him." "Is he coming back?" "Yeah, he's coming back. The bastard needs to drive me to Charlotte. Needs me to drive to Charlotte. Another DUI and he'll be pedaling to work on a bicycle. He won't get too drunk to remember that. Anyway, he didn't go far." The woman pointed up the dirt road where a faint square of light hovered like foxfire. "He's drinking the rest of his whiskey while some hillbilly whines on the radio about how hard life is. When the bottle's empty, he'll be back." As the John boat drifted closer to the bank, the woman stood and I dug the paddle's wooden blade into the silt to keep some distance between us. The lantern's glow fell on both of us now. She was younger than I thought, maybe no more than 30. A large woman, wide-hipped and tall, at least 5'8". Her long blonde hair was clearly dyed. A red welt covered the left side of her face. She wore a man's leather jacket over the yellow blouse and black skirt. Mud grimed, mud grimed the yellow blouse. She raised her hand and fanned at the haze of insects. I hope there are fewer gnats and mosquitoes out there, she said. The damn things are eating me alive. Only if I stay in the middle, I answered. I glanced up at the truck. I guess I'll go back out. I lifted the paddle, thinking if the man didn't come get her in a few minutes, I'd beach the boat in the creek cove, work my way through the brush, and head home. Can I get in the boat with you? The woman asked. I'm just going to make a couple more casts, I answered. I need to get back home. Just a few minutes, she said, and gave me a small smile, the harshness in her face and voice lessening. I'm not going to hurt you. Just a few minutes to get away from the bugs. Can you swim? Yes, she said. What about that man that hit you? He'll be there a while yet. He drinks his whiskey slow. The woman brushed some of the drying mud from her skirt as if to make herself more presentable. Just a few minutes. Okay, I said, and rowed to the bank. I steadied the John boat while she got in the front, the lantern at her feet. The woman talked while I paddled, not turning her head as if addressing the pond. I finally get away from this county, and that son of a bitch drags me back to visit his sister. She's not home, so instead he buys a bottle of wild turkey, and we end up here, with him wanting to lay down on the bank with just a horse blanket beneath us and the mud. When I tell him no way, he gets this jacket from the truck. For your head, he tells me, like that would change my mind. What a prince. She shifted her body to face me. Nothing like coming back home, right? You're from Lattimore? I asked. No, but this county, Lawndale. You know where that is? Yes. But our buddy in the truck used to live in Lattimore, so we're having a Cleveland County reunion tonight, assuming you aren't just visiting. I live here. Still in high school? I nodded. I'll be a senior. We used to kick your asses in football, she said. That was supposed to be a big deal. I pulled in the paddle when we reached the pond center. The rod lay beside me, but I didn't pick it up. The lantern was still on, but we didn't really need it. The moon laid a silvery skim of light on the water. When you get back to Charlotte, will you call the police? No, they wouldn't do anything. The bastard will pay, though. He left more than his damn jacket on that blanket. The woman took a wallet from the jacket, opened it to show no bills were inside. He got paid today, so what he didn't spend on that whiskey is in my pocket now. He'll wake up tomorrow thinking a hangover is the worst thing he'll have to deal with, but he will soon learn different. What if he believes you took it? I'll make myself scarce a while. That's easy to do in a town as big as Charlotte. Anyway, he'll be back living here before long. He tell you that? The woman smiled. He doesn't need to. Haven't you heard of a woman's intuition? Plus, he's always talking about this place, bad-mouthing it a lot, but it's got its hooks in him. Now he'll move back, probably work at the mill, and he'll still be here when they pack the dirt over his coffin. She paused and looked at me. What about you? Already got your job lined up after high school? I'm going to college. College, she said, studying me closely. I'd not have thought that. You've got the look of someone who'd stick around here. Wallace waves from the opposite bank and makes his way around the pond. His pants and tennis shoes are dubbed with mud. Wallace works mostly indoors, so the July sun has reddened his face and unsleeved arms. He nods at the valve. Damn thing's clogged up twice, but it's getting there. The pond is a red clay bowl, 1/3 full. And what was once the shallows, rusty beer cans, and styrofoam bait containers have emerged, along with a ball cap and a flip flop. Further in, Christmas trees submerged for years are now visible, the black branches threaded with red and white bobbers and bream hooks, plastic worms, and bass plugs, including a 6-inch rapala that I risk the slick mud to pull free. Its hooks are so rusty, one breaks off. Let me see, Wallace says and examines the lure. I used to fish with one like this, I tell him. Same size and model. Probably one of yours then, Wallace says, and offers the lure as if to confirm my ownership. You want any of these others? No, I don't even want that one. I'll take them then, Wallace says, lifting a yellow jitterbug from a limb. I hear people collect old plugs nowadays. They might be worth a few dollars. Add to the 100 I'm getting to do this. These days, I need every bit of money I can get. We moved under the big white oak and sit in its shade, watch the pond's slow contraction. More things emerge, a rod and reel, a metal bait bucket, more lures and hooks and bobbers. There are swirls in the water now, fish vainly searching for the upper levels of their world. A large bass leaps near the valve. Wallace nods at a burlap sack. The bluegill will flush down that drain, but it looks like I'll get some good-sized fish to fry up. We watch the water, soon a steady dimpling on the surface. Another bass flails upward, shimmers green and silver in the afternoon sun. Angie said Rose is trying to get loans so she can go to your alma mater next year, Wallace says. It's an alma mater only if you graduate, I reply. Wallace picks up a stick, scrapes some mud off his shoes. He starts to speak, then hesitates, finally does speak. I always admired you're taking responsibility like that. Coming back here, I mean. Wallace shakes his head. We sure live in a different time. Hell, nowadays there's women who don't know or care who their baby's father is, much less expect him to marry her. And the men, they're worse. They act like it's nothing to them, don't even want to be a part of their own child's life. When I don't reply, Wallace checks his watch. This is taking longer than I figured. I'm going to the cafe. I haven't had lunch. Want me to bring you back something? A Coke would be nice, I say. As Wallace drives away, I think of the woman letting her right hand brush the water as I rowed the John boat toward shore. It feels warm, she said, warmer than the air. I bet you could slip in and sink, and it would feel cozy as a warm blanket. The bottom's cold, I answered. If you got that deep, she said, it wouldn't matter anyway, would it? After we got out, the woman asked whose boat it was. I told her I didn't know and started to knot the rope to the white oak. Leave it untied then, she said. I may take it back out. I don't think you should do that, I told her. The boat could overturn or something. I won't overturn the boat, the woman said, and pulled a $10 bill from her skirt pocket. Here's something for taking me out. This too, she said, taking the jacket off. It's a nice one, and he's not getting it back. It looks like a good fit. I'd better not, I said, and picked up my fishing equipment and the lantern. I looked at her. When he comes back, you're not afraid he'll do something else? I mean, I can call the police. She shook her head. Don't do that. Like I said, he needs a driver, so he'll make nice. You go on home. And so I did. And once there, did not call the police or tell my parents. I had trouble sleeping that night, but the next day at work, as the hours passed, I assured myself that if anything really bad had happened, everyone in Lattimore would have known. I went back to the pond for the last time that evening after work. The nylon rope was missing, but the paddle lay under the front seat. As I got in, I lifted the paddle and found a $10 bill beneath it. I rowed out to the center and tied on the rapala and threw it at the pond's far bank. As darkness descended, what had seemed certain earlier seemed less so. When a cast landed in some brush, I cranked the reel fast, hoping to avoid snagging the rapala. But that also caused the lure to go deeper. The rod bowed, and I was hung. Any other time, I'd have rowed to the snag and leaned over the gunwale to let my hand follow the line into the water to find the lure and free the hook. Instead, I tightened the line and gave a hard jerk. The lure stayed where it was. For a minute, I sat there. Something thrashed in the reeds, probably a bass or muskrat. Then the water was still. Moonlight brightened as if trying to probe the dark water. I took out my pocket knife, cut the line, then rowed to shore and beached the boat. That night, I dreamed that I'd let my hand follow the line until my fingers were tangled in hair. Wallace's truck comes down the dirt road. He hands me my Coke and opens a white bag containing his drink and hamburger. We sit under the tree. It's draining good now, he says. The fish not inhaled by the drain are more visible, fins sharking the surface. A catfish that easily weighs 5 pounds wallows onto the bank as if hoping for some sudden evolution. Wallace quickly finishes his hamburger. He takes the burlap sack and walks into what's left of the pond. He hooks a finger through the catfish's gills and drops it into the sack. In another half hour, what thinning water remains boils with bass and catfish. More fish beach themselves, and Wallace gathers them like fallen fruit, the sack punching and writhing in his grasp. You come over tonight, he says to me. There'll be plenty. As evening comes, more snags emerge, fewer lures. A whiskey bottle and another bait bucket, some cans that probably rolled and drifted into the pond's deep center. Then I see the cinder block with what looks like a withered arm draped over it. Wallace continues to gather more fish, including a blue cat that will go 10 pounds, its whiskers long as night crawlers. I walk into the red slanting mud, moving slowly so I won't slip. I stop when I stand only a fishing rod's length from the cinder block. What do you see? Walter asks. I wait for the water to give me an answer, and before long it does. Not an arm, but a leather jacket sleeve, tied to the block by a fray of blue nylon. I step into the water and loosen the jacket from the concrete, and as I do, I remember the $10 bill left in the boat. Her assumption that I'd be the one to find it. I feel something in the jacket's right pocket and pull out a withered billfold. Inside are 2 silted shreds of thin plastic, a driver's license, some other card now indiscernible, no bills. I stand in the pond center and toss the billfold's remnants into the drain. I drop the jacket and step back as Wallace gills the last fish abandoned by the water. Wallace knots the sack and lifts it. The veins in his bicep and forearm ridge up as he does so. That's at least 50 pounds worth, he says, and sets the sack down. Let me clear this drain one more time, then I'm going home to cook these up. Wallace leans over the drain and claws away the clumps of mud and wood. The remaining water gurgles down the pipe. I hate to see this pond go, he says. I guess the older you get, the less you like any kind of change. Wallace lifts the sack of fish and pulls it over his shoulder. We walk out of the pond as dusk comes on. You going to come over later? He asks. Not tonight. Another time then, Wallace says. Need a ride up to your mom's house? No, I answer. I'll walk it. After Wallace drives off, I sit on the bank, shadow Shadows deepen where the water was, making it appear that the pond has refilled. After a while, I get up. By the time I'm over the barbed wire fence, I can look back and no longer tell what was and what is. That was The Woman at the Pond by Ron Rash, from a collection of short stories, selected stories, Something Rich and Strange. Okay, that one has haunted me, as I said, and I read it a few weeks ago, and maybe now that I've shared it with you, I can let that one go. We'll see. I might be back to this book. I like Ron Rash, and he's got other things in there, but I'm going to let it sit for a little bit. I hope you let that story sit with you. My father says we could chat about it. We could think about how to chat about it. We'll figure that all out. That'll be part of our our next phase of Frankenstein Tea here. For today, have a good afternoon. Sun it's interesting out there out the window. It looks like the sun is shining, but the sky is gray. Not really sure what's happening, but I do know that it is Friday. And so have a good Friday night. And I'll see you here tomorrow for Frankenstein Tea at 3 o'clock on YouTube. Thanks, everybody. Bye.